Welcome to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, where faith and liberty meet. Our host is Dave Garrison from Ohio Christian University, a longtime Fortune 100 company top executive and a former U.S. Congressional Candidate from Texas. Our goal for the Faith and Liberty Talk Show is to give you an opportunity to listen to interviews and discussions with significant authorities and experts on subjects related to Christians engaging in the civil and political arena. The mission of the show is to give you real information and not sound bites that you can really use. We have a website for the show, faithandliberty.org. At this website, you can obtain more information about the show, our guests, subscribe to our newsletter, and become a friend of the show, and like us on our Faith and Liberty Facebook page. You can also access all of our previous shows. Please keep in mind that the Faith and Liberty Talk Show exists only with the generosity and support of our listeners. If our show is of value to you, we would appreciate you visiting our website, faithandliberty.org, and donating to the show. Now, let's begin today's show. Thank you for joining us.
We are so pleased, and there are a lot of personal reasons I'm pleased today to have one of the greatest country western singers, Holly Dunn, with us. She was chosen not too long ago, I think, as one of the top 100 country stars of all time. Is that correct, Holly?
Well, so I hear. Of course, there's a new crop coming. There's hundreds more moving to Nashville every day. So I may be being bumped down the list as we speak. But anyway, for that moment, it felt good to be recognized in there with a bunch of people that I certainly respect.
Well, I doubt that you're going to be bumped down because as any of us who have followed country music at all know your famous song, although it never reached number one, and that's Daddy's Hands.
Right. Yeah, it was a top 10 record, and yeah, I had other hits. I sang and wrote, I guess probably 12 or 14 other top 10 number records, and had 3 or 4 number one records. But Daddy's Hands is the one, that everybody, if they're kind of scratching their heads and looking at me funny, like I think I know who you are, but I can't quite, I can't quite grasp that, and. I'll go Daddy's Hands, and they go, oh, yeah, you're that girl,
Well, I did go to YouTube, and there's all sorts of people out there still performing it in their bedrooms and all over the place. So it's a song that really grabs people. But I did a count, and it appears to me you've had at least 25 top 40 songs. You've had 4 number ones, 7 more in the top 10. So that's quite a career of music. And
well, I was very blessed, and the longer I am away from it, really, I retired in 2003 and just kind of walked away. But the more I appreciate it, I think, when you're in the middle of it, you don't always have the perspective on it. That you're always kind of frustrated. At least I was, because we weren't doing more and we weren't bigger and we weren't. There's always this pressure from your record label to do more and be bigger and sell more and until when you're in the thick of it, it's like you can't quite see what's happening until the smoke clears a little bit and you have some of that 20/20 hindsight. And I look back now and I go, I was very blessed, and I wish I had been a little more grateful for it back then in a way,
Well, sometimes the reflection on things are more important than the moment you go through it. So I think you're right about that. You've been a 3-time Grammy nominee. The Academy of Country Music named you as the new female vocalist in 1987, the BMI Songwriter of the Year. I think there are quite a few people that know you that don't realize your songwriting career was prior and during your career, so I think that's great.
Well, it was nice to be able to come in that way. I have a older brother named Chris, who...
Waters.
Well, he goes by Waters, which is his middle name. That was his professional pen name, I guess. But there was already a Christopher Dunn here that was a musician, so he just had to kind of drop the Dunn for a while. But he's a very fine songwriter and record producer, and he sang background on a lot of my records, and we wrote a lot of my songs together, a lot of my hits together. And Chris kind of made it seem possible. He graduated from college and had a master's degree in creative writing, and he moved to Nashville and just said he just wanted to see what happened, throw his hat in the ring, and immediately began to have hit records on other singers and things, and it just made it. By the time I got out of Abilene Christian University in 1979, I thought, I've got to try this. I don't want to wake up at the age I'm at now and go, why didn't I do that and just see what would happen when I was young and free and unencumbered by anything and just crazy and dumb enough to think that I could do something. We're sort of 10 feet tall and bulletproof when we're in our 20s, I think, And a lot braver then than I am now, I can tell you that. But
yeah, I watch a lot of those college students at Ohio Christian where I'm at, and I think you think you're invincible and you'll try anything, and we want to keep that spirit in America, of course. So
yeah, absolutely.
And you've performed for 4 presidents, 3 Republicans, and 1 Democrat.
Yeah.
Now I see that you performed for both of the Bushes. Texans.
I sure did.
So I'm glad that they recognized that they needed you.
I hung out with them quite a bit. It was interesting. The big Bush, as I call him, the first George Bush, 40 whatever his number was
1
in the line of succession.
Yeah.
He had me over. We did quite a bit of things together, and at one point, somewhere in all my boxes of files and things out in the garage, I have a playlist from Air Force One when he was in office, and they have their little music menu,
Sure.
you can put your headset on
Sure.
and listen to. And between my brother and I, my brother's songwriting and my performing and my songwriting, we're on there. There was 25 songs, and I think something like 10 or 11 of them was either me as a singer or a songwriter or my brother as a songwriter. So it was interesting. Mom and Dad were really proud about that.
Yeah, I'll bet. Sure.
So they were fans, and so anyway, that was fun.
Well, for the listeners' benefit, and Holly knows this, one of the main reasons I got a hold of Holly is because of the song Daddy's Hands. Back in the late 80s, when that song was really going wild, I would make pancakes. It's about the only thing I know how to make, that and grilled cheese. And on Saturday mornings, it was a tradition that I would go out there and I'd make pancakes. We have 4 kids. We were living in Western Pennsylvania for those few years. And then I would put Daddy's Hands on our stereo and play it real loud and wake them up on Saturday morning to Daddy's Hands, because I wanted to remind them of Daddy's Hands and the meaning of that. So let's go ahead and discuss that. Where did the song come from? And I know you had your father in mind, but please describe that. And I know you've probably had to do this a million times, but one more, I'd appreciate it.
Well, that's fine, and I don't ever get tired of it. I'm so grateful for that little song. I was a struggling songwriter in 1983, and just hoping I would write something that somebody would hear at some point, and hopefully I would get to sing something at some point. I wasn't a recording artist then at all, but I wanted to be. And Father's Day was rolling around that year, and it was about April, and I was kind of looking towards that, and this image of my dad's hands came up. Dad was a preacher, but we never had any money, so I had to fix everything himself, around the house, whether it was a car or, the washing machine or whatever it was, So he always had busted knuckles and Band-Aids and things like that, and so I don't know, this song just started coming out of me, and I wrote almost all of it before I had even sat down with my guitar, to figure it out, and it just poured out of me, and I, looking back on it now, I see what a gift that was, what an incredible moment of grace that was in my life, and that song has continued to be blessed all along the way. I just almost feel like I was taking dictation that morning, and it was a blessing to my dad and my relationship, and then it just completely went on and on and on and on, and just superseded everything else that I ever thought would happen. It gave me my recording career, really, and it was my first top 10 record, and it stayed on the charts for 6 months, and it's still one of the most requested songs in country music of all time. It's just as my Nashville attorney would say, it's an evergreen copyright. It just never dies, and that's what you want to have. So, but it just went on and on and on, and it still does. And I just feel very grateful for that little song. It meant so much to my family in a personal way, but it has gone on, and it's just like little ripples in a pond that just 30 years later, literally, just continue to ripple out there. And I get letters and emails all the time about that song. I mean, it's just amazing. Nobody's more amazed about it than me. I just sort of stand back and go, wow, I'm glad I was listening that day when God said, hello, I've got something for you here, special delivery. Go get your pencil, so.
It is one of the songs, unlike some of the, of course, I'm early 60s, so I have a different perspective, but some of the newer country songs, it's often hard to hear the words. Mm-hmm. And that mm-hmm. song was very clear. You have a great, wonderful, clear voice, starting off with, talking about being your daddy's hands folded silently in prayer, mm-hmm. And knowing that you had a pastor father.
Right.
But I believe there was a line in there, and I'm looking at the lyrics right now, where my son said, but that daddy's hands, he spanked his children.
He sure did. I'm here to tell you. Probably not nearly as much as I needed.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah. That was the only part of the song my kids thought, I don't know about that part.
Yeah. It's funny. Dad, if he was still living, he'd be 96 years old today.
Oh, wow.
He passed away in 1997, unfortunately, with cancer, terminal cancer. He was not quite 79 years old. And he almost made it 79. So, but he was old school, old school Church of Christ, a very fundamental, mm-hmm. Evangelical preacher, and not cruel in any way, shape, or form, but just very strict, and wanted his kids to be raised upright and in the church and to mind our P's and Q's. And we were preachers' kids. We were very aware of our place, in the whole scheme of things.
And there were 4 children in the family, you
There
said?
are 4 of us. I'm the youngest. I have 3 older brothers.
Oh, you're the baby.
I'm really the baby because there's 7 years between Chris and I. We're the youngest ones, and my songwriter brother, and there's 7 years between us. So there was a little gap there. So I really was the baby, but
yeah, we have one of those.
yeah, and kind of a little
No, it wasn't that so much as they get away with a lot, and but the babies of the family seem to hold the family together, and I love that.
Well, I hope so, but. Anywho, we, Dad was a great guy, just a super person, and just so smart and so knowledgeable and in everything, and very creative in his own way. And
as a San Antonioan, what place does San Antonio have in your heart? Did you write any songs that had San Antonio in it?
I wrote some songs that they didn't really have, the verbiage of San Antonio, but they definitely had the feel of the multicultural atmosphere there. As you know, the Hispanic flavor is everywhere there, from the street names to the food to just the culture. And of course, I was raised in my high school back in the day was one of the most perfectly racially mixed high schools in San Antonio without busing. I mean, it just was the way the demographics were, and I had friends of all colors and surnames, and
that was true for the high school I went to. You went to Jefferson, I went to East Central.
Yeah, and so there were a few songs, if you listen to my albums, some of the songs that weren't necessarily singles, but I even have an album titled Across the Rio Grande, which has the title cut is a song about a Hispanic guy standing on the bank of the Rio Grande, I guess, and looking longingly over into the United States, knowing that he could make a better life for himself over there, and wishing he could, do something about that. So, and I even sing a verse in Spanish, so on that record. So, yeah, very definitely being from Texas and being from that part of Texas, it was a huge influence on my music and my musical taste to this day. And if I'm just in my just listening mode even now, I'll put on some sort of Spanish or flamenco sounding instrumental.
I do too.
I've got a pile of them. It's just the most. I don't know what it does. It just sort of speaks to my heart, and I that's what I listen to when I'm just sort of listening.
Michael W. Smith for Compassion.
I cannot begin to tell you how crazy I am about compassion. I don't get involved in too many things, but I'll never forget 13 years ago I got asked to be involved with Compassion. And if I'm not mistaken, I think my answer was no, because I didn't know anything about them. But I said, I'll tell you what I'd love to do. I would love to sponsor a child, and then I would like to go see what you do. I'll never forget my first trip to Ecuador. It was just life-changing. I don't know if you've ever been to a third world country, but at some point, if you ever have a chance to go, it will change your life. But I went and saw Compassion's work and what they did nutritionally for the kids and then educationally. And then the most important thing was that they shared the gospel with these kids. And I'm convinced that there's hundreds of thousands of kids who have come to know Christ in a personal way through Compassion sponsorship program.
To sponsor a child or to learn more, call Compassion now, toll-free 877-496-7016. That's 877-496-7016.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. We hope you're enjoying this week's show. After a short break to hear from our sponsor, Ohio Christian University, we will rejoin our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's guest.
Does it seem like today's culture is racing towards the edge of a cliff? Choosing an educational institution is like choosing a winning race car. Ohio Christian is a values-driven university, preparing servant leaders to engage their world. Graduates excel in leadership. Just ask our 5-time New York Times best-selling author, Dr. John Maxwell. If you're looking to get on course, come enter the race with us. We're now enrolling for the fall semester, so enroll today at www.ohiochristian.edu or call 1-877-7-OCU now.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, where faith and liberty meet. Now, back to the discussion with our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's wonderful guest.
Now, there's one test to know whether you are a true San Antonian. Okay? Yeah, here it goes. And I ran into this myself, so I'm going to try it on you. In Wednesday, in the cafeterias in schools in San Antonio, what did they serve?
Oh, my goodness. It was Mexican food day, and you would about trample each other in the hallway, being first in line. Let me tell you, for 50 cents, which is what lunch cost back then, you could get the best Mexican food in town. And I'm telling you what, you could smell it coming up through the hallways. And those
you are a San Antonian.
Those little ladies back there in their little hairnets.
Oh, yeah.
Now, those sloppy enchiladas and tamales and oh, my goodness, I'm making my mouth water right now thinking about it.
Let me go another place for you. Our listeners are always quite interested in people's spiritual journey. So if you just take a moment to kind of describe that, I think they would appreciate that.
Sure. You know, of course, we've talked. I was raised a preacher's kid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you hang in there with the upraising, that you've had and upbringing. And I went through my moments. I went to a Christian college, but once I got out of school and moved to Nashville and got into the music business, I didn't necessarily go every Sunday, and I kind of drifted away a little bit. I've always considered myself to be a spiritual person. I certainly have never, ever stopped believing that there was a God up there that loved me and cared about me. But when you're in the back of a tour bus and 200 or 300 days a year for 20 years, not that that's an excuse, but you're not there. It's hard to put down a root somewhere in a church, and I didn't. And I'm very honest to say I didn't. And I'm probably in the last decade I have really rekindled my relationship with my God, and in a big way, and have gotten very much into participating in a church and even in the lay ministry and things like that, and it has meant a lot to me. It's meant the world to me, and I just guess I was ready. Sometimes you just have to be ready, and I really just kind of probably a decade ago I said, you know what, I've just got to roll up my sleeves and find out and dig into this stuff that I just sort of took for granted and that was sort of crammed down my throat, most of my life, and just figure out what of this is authentic for me, and what else is there in there that would be authentic for me, and I did, and it's been a wonderful journey that continues today, and I get up every morning and have for the last probably 5 years, and I just have a little quiet time. I read some devotional material, and that's how I start my day every day. And I'll be honest, I when I was in the thick of my music career, I was what I would call a crisis Christian. when things were going great, I was top of the heap, and everything was good, and God was sort of somewhere way back, in the back burners back there, but then as soon as I'd hit a big bump in the road or things weren't going so well, I was on my knees. Oh Lord, help me.
Yeah.
And now I think the big difference is that it's just a very consistent walk, daily walk, and I need it. I need it badly, and I needed it then, and I wish I'd had it then. That's my one regret. If I have one regret about my music career, it's that I was floundering a few times, trying to do it myself and thinking that I had to do it all myself, and that it was all on me, and it's a stressful business, and you got a lot of people with their fingers in the pie, and it's very stressful, and there would have been many times in my life when having the relationship I have with God now would have changed the whole landscape for me, and even to the decisions I made and the people I chose to work with, and I wish if I had a do-over, it would be that, it would really be that.
Well, a lot of people hang on to the verses, and I'm sure your parents did too. Out of Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it." Do you think that's what motivated you, what'd you say, 10 years ago or so, is because of that upbringing, or?
I'm sure. Well, I absolutely. I'm sure the influence of that Christian home, that I grew up in, where it was Jesus and God 24/7. I mean, even my friends and my youth group and all that. It was just a fabric of our life, and that's just the way we were brought up, and I have no doubt that has been a tremendous influence on me. Even when I had sort of drifted away from a daily, relationship with God, it bothered me. It kind of bothered me, and I would get these little pains.
Yeah.
We
these know
little
those
longings.
pains.
These little pains, in my heart and my soul, and I knew that I needed to be. Sunday morning would roll around, and I'd be bumping down the highway in a tour bus somewhere, and I'd get these little thinking, well, gosh, I would have been at church if I'd been, when I was younger, and something's missing, and I think the death of my dad, and then my mother passed away in March of 2011, and that really, my dad really got me thinking about it. My dad, his passing really was sort of the pivotal point, I think, for me to really start getting out the big shovel and digging through, everything I'd been taught to believe, and the stuff I agreed with, and the stuff that didn't sound exactly right to me, but I knew there was truth there, and just kind of start shoveling through it, and then taking care of my mom the last year or so of her life, and being there, and what a blessing it was, and she was so faithful. She was such a faithful person her whole life, and I was there. I literally had my hand on her chest and felt her last heartbeat. And she saw something. I'm absolutely convinced at the very last moments of her life, she literally saw something. And her last expiration of breath was, and I just like to think that she saw Jesus, and that's just the most beautiful thing. And I was already a believer. Before, but I'll tell you what, that just absolutely was the slam dunk to me forever, because I was there. I experienced that with her.
Billy Graham, some years ago, wrote a book called Angels, and he had collected all these stories of believers who were passing, who you knew they were seeing something as they were passing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is an absolutely valid thing, and I believe that believers are ushered in with the Lord at the moment of their death, and I think you are 100% correct. When you go into a Church of Christ, they don't have musical instruments.
Right.
But they have the most beautiful a cappella and harmonies that you'll ever find. So did that make for any part of your career? Did that help you? Because you had to really focus on the vocals?
Well, I'm sure it did, and my dad had a beautiful singing voice, and my mother did too. And I grew up, sitting next to Mom. Your dad was always kind of up on the dais, but he had a booming tenor voice that you could hear all over the place. And I learned to sing alto harmonies standing next to my mother or sitting next to my mother and reading those old shape note, hymnals. And I still have a great love for those old hymns. And so definitely, very definitely, I'm sure it did. And Dad was, he was a staunch Church of Christ, but if on a weekday, if he was at the church building, I could come and he would flip the microphone on in the auditorium for me, and and I could sing over the mic.
How cool!
And I'd just stand up there and sing. I'd get out a hymnal just all by myself and just sort of sing and pretend like I was leading singing, even though I wouldn't have been allowed to, the Church of Christ. And it was wonderful, So they were very encouraging of my music career. I don't think they really realized I was going to go to Nashville, and but they were very encouraging to all of us kids about the things that we were interested in, and they really were participated. They took me around to shows that I needed to go do when I was in high school, and they would be there in the audience and scrape together the money to buy us guitars and instruments, so we could learn to play and I mean,
you don't go into the past. You don't go in the pastorate to be rich.
No, for sure, and they sacrificed. They sacrificed a lot so that my brothers and I could have whatever we needed to further, whatever it was we were interested in.
Well, like Elvis, did you buy him pink Cadillacs or something when you made it big?
No, I bought him a white Oldsmobile.
There you go. 6 years old.
A little more befitting a preacher.
Yeah, there you go. Oh,
I really did. And a refrigerator.
Well,
Bless their hearts. At about 1990, I don't know, I think it's probably about 1989 or 90, I went home one Christmas and they were using the same old Frigidaire, and it's testimony to Frigidaire, the way they used to build things back in the day. They had this fridge when my oldest brother, who is like almost 70 now, they had this refrigerator when he was a little guy, and it was literally held together with duct tape and wire that Dad kind of wired the handle back on it. And I stood back and I looked at that thing and I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm Holly Dunn. I think I can afford to buy my mom and dad service. So I went home after Christmas and I called up Sears or somewhere and I had one delivered. And I just told them, I said, y'all be home.
There you go.
They were living in Austin at the time. Dad was preaching at University Hills Church of Christ in Austin at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And that was his last church.
Okay.
And
that's a pretty good size church.
Out on 183, And so I called him. I said, just be home on this day because something's coming. I said, you may want to clean out the fridge.
Rebecca St. James for Compassion.
I think one of the big issues that I see in my own life, and I just see in young people, is this common selfishness. It's a complete battle to not live for self because everything is saying, Rebecca, if it makes you feel good, do that. Please yourself. The culture is encouraging that in such a huge way. And I think compassion is an amazing way that we can be encouraged to live beyond ourselves. It's not about us, It's not about how we feel. It's more about serving Him and showing His love to a hurting world. And through compassion, you really actually get to see the need. Here is a huge need, and I can make a difference one child at a time.
To sponsor a child or to learn more, call Compassion now, toll free 877-496-7016. That's 877-496-7016.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. After a short break to hear from our sponsor, Ohio Christian University, we will rejoin our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's guest.
Ohio Christian University is one of the fastest growing universities in the nation, offering undergraduate and graduate degree programs fully online in the areas of business, psychology, chemical dependency counseling, nursing, and ministry. You can earn an accredited, relevant, and affordable online degree all from the comfort of your home. Now is the time to prepare for your future and earn your degree with Ohio Christian University. Call today at 855-OCU-GRAD or online at ocuonline.com.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. where faith and liberty meet. Now, back to the discussion with our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's wonderful guest.
Well, I have a lot of questions, but before we do that, I would like to talk about your art and how you moved into that. What inspired you to move into art, and where is that all going right now?
Well, my mom was a wonderful painter. She started painting, taking art lessons when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and
pastels, oils,
oil paint. She painted very traditional Texas landscape paintings,
my
blue bonnets,
favorite.
and all the up around Willow City Loop and all around there. And she probably painted every oak tree, in the hill country at least once, I'm sure. And so I grew up, smelling her linseed oil and turpentine and all that. It would just seem like a very natural thing, to have a
Was
mother
she very
to paint it.
successful at selling them?
She did pretty well. She was pretty regionally well known and painted probably, I don't know how many, hundreds and hundreds of paintings and sold every one. And it was a big help financially.
You don't have any of them?
I do.
Okay.
I have probably 4 or 5, and my brothers, we all have some.
Great.
And and she did really well with it, and had some shows, some one-woman shows, and then she was a life member of the River Art Group in San Antonio, and once a year they would have their show down on the banks of the San Antonio River, and we'd go kind of man her little booth, and she would.
I
sell
must
her
have walked
art.
right by you and didn't realize you were
probably
going to
did.
be the
You
daddy
probably
hands
did.
gal.
So there you go, and I'd be sitting there, with my mom, and so all of my brothers and I have artistic abilities to a greater or lesser degree, and I knew I liked to draw and sketch and doodle and stuff, but I really didn't allow myself the time or the place to mess around with it until probably in the last 10 or 12 years.
It's hard to do on a tour bus, isn't it?
It is, and I carried a little sketch pad with me, and but it, because there's a lot of idle time, where you're just sitting there looking out the window waiting for your next show, and you're all dressed up, so you can't really go walk around the fairgrounds,
right.
and you're Holly Dunn, looking like Holly Dunn,
right?
So, so I just sort of sit there and doodle what I saw out the window. But probably about 10 or 12 years ago, I really began to, as my tour schedule began to slow down a little bit, I began to purpose to allow myself the time and the space to play with it. And I don't know how I got into pastels. I work in soft pastels, but I don't know. I picked them up and it just felt right to me. And so I've been messing around with those since then, and I do shows now and have sold. I don't know how many paintings I've done. I've several hundred, I guess, and I've sold almost everything I've ever done. And
do you sell the originals?
I do, yeah. I sell originals and prints, and I do. Up until recently, I was doing probably 6 or 8 shows a year, scattered around Texas and New Mexico and Colorado, and sort of the West, and the Southwest part of the country. And
if people wanted to buy your art, they could go to your, and we'll put a link up to your studio. And
just go to my website, hollydunn.com, and I have a bunch of prints on there. And if somebody was interested in seeing what my latest original was, I could certainly send them an image, email or whatever. And I need to update my website. It seems like we always need to do those things and we never get around to it.
But you do ceramic tiles with your
I have those made, but they have my images on there, and we do that, and box, tile, like little kind of keepsake boxes, jewelry boxes, for lack of a better term, with a little tile inset in there. And I promised myself at one point I wasn't ever going to get into all that little, what I call geegaw kind of stuff, but
you're Texan.
When the economy started to crumble, art, people don't have to have art to live. They need bread and milk and gas in their gas tanks. And
well, I need books to live. I have to turn to that, and my wife thinks the same thing.
So, I started thinking smaller. I thought, for every one original I sell, I can sell 10 of these little things. So I began to think a little bit smaller terms, and it's been a good thing. So
you ought to do something on the Daddy's Hand theme.
Well, I have a little thing that I sell on my website. I didn't draw it. One of my best friends from high school, Gail Hindelang Shelton is a professional artist and was an art teacher for many years. She lives in Louisiana now. But way back when Daddy's Hands was a hit, I didn't even know I wasn't sure I could even draw yet. I wasn't even really doing that yet. But I hired Gail to do a little rendering of a daddy and a child walking hand in hand up this rocky path, and then I hand wrote the lyrics to Daddy's Hands.
I saw that. That is really cute.
And we still have some of those, and I've sold a boatload of those over the years.
Well, that's a great idea.
You know.
Michael W. Smith for Compassion.
I cannot begin to tell you how crazy I am about compassion. I don't get involved in too many things, but I'll never forget 13 years ago I got asked to be involved with Compassion. And if I'm not mistaken, I think my answer was no, because I didn't know anything about them. But I said, I'll tell you what I'd love to do. I would love to sponsor a child, and then I would like to go see what you do. I'll never forget my first trip to Ecuador. It was just life-changing. I don't know if you've ever been to a third world country, but at some point, if you ever have a chance to go, it will change your life. But I went and saw Compassion's work and what they did nutritionally for the kids and then educationally. And then the most important thing was that they shared the gospel with these kids. And I'm convinced that there's hundreds of thousands of kids who have come to know Christ in a personal way through Compassion sponsorship program.
To sponsor a child or to learn more, call Compassion now, toll free 877-496-7016. That's 877-496-7016.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. After a short break to hear from our sponsor, Ohio Christian University, we will rejoin our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's guest.
Ohio Christian University is one of the fastest growing universities in the nation, offering undergraduate and graduate degree programs fully online in the areas of business, psychology, chemical dependency counseling, nursing, and ministry. You can earn an accredited, relevant, and affordable online degree, all from the comfort of your home. Now is the time to prepare for your future and earn your degree with Ohio Christian University. Call today at 855-OCU-GRAD or online at ocuonline.com.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, where faith and liberty meet. Now, back to the discussion with our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's wonderful guest.
You've been out of the music career just about 10 years. What do you miss?
The creative part was always my favorite thing, sitting around with another songwriter, holding the guitar and just writing songs and then seeing them, doing a demo recording of them and then maybe getting to see them made into a record and maybe even a video. I mean, it's all that creative end was really my favorite part, to be honest. But I did enjoy, once I got into the groove of it, I really enjoyed the traveling. It took me about the first year or so to really kind of let go and just appreciate getting to do that, And I do kind of still have wanderlust. All somebody has to do is sort of jingle car keys, and I'm ready to. I'm like a dog. I'm out the door and sitting in the front seat, ready to go.
Well, I've moved my wife 17 times, and I think she thinks I have the same problem. But
well, I hear you. I'm now on house number 12, so I've lived in 3 different states and in 12 different places. So I unfortunately all that traveling just sort of begets more traveling. I'm afraid,
What do you not miss about the music business?
The insecurity, the politics, the knot in your stomach as you release a new record and you don't know whether it's gonna go up the chart or crash with a resounding thud, or there's so much control that you have to relinquish to your record label and the promotion people. And I mean, you can spend 300 or 400 hours on a CD, making an album project as best you can, but the minute you hand that off, it's out of your hands, and you can get out there and kill yourself on the road promoting it and getting on TV and radio and talking about it, but unless the whole machine is working in your favor and in your corner, it's not gonna it's not gonna have success all by itself. So that part was always just the hard, just kind of kept your stomach in a knot all the time.
You almost feel like a kept person. Is how I've heard people describe it, is that they're telling you where to go, what to do, how to do it, and they felt like they were losing their own identity. Does that ring a bell for you? Or
It does in a way, and I think I probably suffered a little less with that syndrome than some others because I wrote most of my music and I produced or co-produced most of my records. So
and you're the baby in the family.
Well, there you go. And I was spoiled, and I was going to have my way.
There you go. I didn't say
but,
it. You
know,
did.
I had kind of had more control, over at least what I was singing, than some people do. But there is a certain amount of you are beholden. You're beholden to your record label. They expect you to get out and do your part to make that project a success, and then you have management that are wanting you that are pushing you, and and you have a band that you're feeding, and if you're not working, they're not working, and on and on she goes, and there's a publicist that gets their piece of everything. So you're working for a lot of people. You're not just out there working for yourself. You're working for. I think at one point I had something like 15 full-time people that were on my payroll, and that's nothing compared to some folks. I don't know
especially
how many
today.
people Carrie Underwood has working for her, but I'm sure a bunch. Yeah, but that's a lot of mouths to feed, and there's always that pressure that, well, if I really, I need to take a week off, but if I do, then that means everybody's taking a week off. So
do you miss the people coming up to you and say, "You're Holly Dunn, can I have your autograph?" Or do you still get a lot of that?
I don't get a lot of it. It fades. It's fading, with time. And as I get farther and farther away from my true active part of my career.
Well, from your photos, you still look like the beautiful Holly Dunn that recorded that music.
You. Well, I appreciate it.
So it'd be easy to recognize, I think.
Well, occasionally somebody will look at me sideways. I can tell their wheels are turning, and they're going, "Is that Kathy Mattea or Patty Loveless or is that Pam Tillis? No, is that Pam Tillis?" Yeah.
You should wear
but it does wear
a little badge. I'm Holly Dunn. I'm the daddy's hands lady.
I visited a church not too long ago, a month or so ago, out here in Nashville. I was kind of trying to find a place, and after church I was walking, kind of leaving, and I heard somebody say, "Hey," and I turned around, and this woman was, "You're Holly Dunn," and I said, "Well, yeah, I am." So it does happen. It's sometimes it's the craziest places.
But do you miss that when it was at the peak?
It was very flattering, but there were times when you wish you could sort of have a knob and turn it on and off, because sometimes it came at some, I don't want to say it was ever a bother, because it's really kind of, you're doing that. Fame is a funny thing. You make records and you put yourself out there so that you'll get recognized and sell more records and get more famous. But then on the other hand, you kind of hate it when you get so famous that you don't have your anonymity anymore, and it's hard to go to the grocery store, and it's hard to, you look up and everybody's staring at you in Dillard's when you're just trying to buy, something. So it kind of is a double-edged sword, you kind of want it, and I guess that's why you're doing it, but on the other hand, you get it and it's not so great, so it's just.
Now I may go a little bit from preaching to meddling here, but how hard is it for a Christian to maintain their Christian witness in the country music business?
I think it kind of depends on the Christian. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I probably didn't do a very good job at it. Not that I was off doing something, heinous or anything. I was always try to be. I still have my values. They were still intact and stuff. But
right.
And I tried to be thoughtful about the things I did. And my dad was still a pulpit minister until 1995, and so well into my career. So I was very aware of that. I didn't want to do anything that would ever embarrass my family or reflect badly upon them. They were so proud of my career and all that. So that probably kept me in the from veering off into the ditch too badly, and I never was a big drinker, and I didn't do drugs or anything like that. So just from a personal standpoint, I wasn't in any danger of doing that. But just personally, on the bus with my band, with my cohorts and things, I could have been a better example, But it's hard not to just kind of get sucked into some of that. But it's a very critical business. You sit around and you sort of, I guess because everybody's egos are so tender and sensitive, you tend to sort of, it's easy to tear people down and to gossip and get all into that stuff, and I had my moments, I have no doubt, and and I'm sure I had my moments of being a prima donna where I needed things exactly so, and you know, I look back and I think I could have done things better, but you know, you just kind of do what you do. But it depends. You've got great people like Vince Gill and Amy Grant who just from the get-go they do all kinds of philanthropic things, and they're just constantly giving back, and they, you know, just have this wonderful, you know, really quiet kind of witness where they're not screaming and yelling, but they're just constantly giving and doing, and I really think like I said, it really depends on the person and who you are and how far you want to take it. But you certainly have a lot of opportunities, and it's good to always bear in mind that somebody's always watching. And I was very aware of that somebody was always watching.
Yeah, I was very aware of that. My first few years was in northern Illinois, and as an older teenager, we moved to Texas. But my grandfather was an elder in the local Disciples of Christ Church, and our family was a small town, and you were concerned about the reflection you had on others. And I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore. But when you see a young person today who has really exceptional music talents, and we have quite a few at our university. We've got a couple, especially a couple of young ladies who have considered American Idol and The Voice and things like this, and they're just really good. What's your advice to them in general?
Oh, you know, I used to see parents kind of pushing their kids, their really young kids, you know, they'd come up to the autograph table after my shows and say, oh, here's little Sally or little Susie or whoever, and she just sings like a bird, and maybe she was 12 or 13 years old and looked about 20, you know what I mean? And, and it would just always kind of make my heart sink a little bit, and Mom and Dad were just pushing, and here's her tape, and could you know, listen to this? And And my first advice was, you know, stay in school.
Right.
You know, you've got plenty of time.
And you went through college yourself.
Absolutely. You know, so did, Garth Brooks has a college degree. Trisha Yearwood has a college degree. I could go on and on.
Your brother
and on.
has a master's.
My brother has a master's degree. And, you know, you have plenty of time. And so don't sell yourself short. You know, go to school, finish up, get a degree. My degree helped me tremendously. I didn't think it would at the time, but it was in radio and television broadcasting and advertising and marketing. And I used every bit of that, you know, at one point or another. And I was chomping at the bit, believe me, to get out of school. When I graduated from college, my dad put in the church bulletin that Holly had graduated, Lord, how come, from Abilene Christian University, because they had to just all but force me to stay every semester because I wanted to go to Nashville so bad. But that's my first advice: stay in school. You got plenty of time. But if you're you know, if you do want to get into it, just, you know, it's a tough business, and there's going to be. It's hard. You know, I think somebody said 1% of the people that ever move to Nashville ever really get to make it big. And 5% will get to maybe maybe work in the music business in some capacity. It may not be, they might move here to be a singer and then end up being a song publisher or song plugger or something, you know, or working on at a television studio or something. But, you know, just try to be realistic and be grateful for what happens and just think hard and just really try to, if you are a praying person, you know, try to maintain your values and you know, unfortunately, the entertainment world, as is a lot of things out there, is fraught with people that are just out after a lot of the wrong things and in it for all the wrong reasons. And I was in music because I loved music. I was creative and I wanted to write and sing, and the best vehicle for me to do that was me, you know, to get my songs out there, was to do them myself. And but there's a lot of folks that are in it for a whole other set of reasons, and you just have to really guard your heart.
Yes, especially a lot of them have gotten into I got a record contract, a development contract, and then they find out that they owe more money than they're actually bringing in, you know.
Yeah, these labels, they spend millions and millions of dollars on you, and, you know, it took me probably 10 or 12 years of hits to finally recoup, at my major label at Warner Brothers. And I had lunch with a very fine singer that's long retired but had many hits before I ever came on the scene, and we had lunch not too long ago, and she was talking about it, and I was talking about something, we kind of commiserating about our early days in the music business, kind of coming up at sort of in the same time. And she said she had never recouped. And I said, well, you had like 5 or 6 massive hits. And she said, yeah, but you know what? The label, I was into the label for so much money that I will never recoup money. So it's not everything that it's cracked up to be. And you just have to just kind of guard your heart and realize that it's just a step, and that label deal or whatever, it's just a step, and there'll be many steps, and times when you go forward, and many times when you take 3 steps backwards, and you really, to look at it as a business is probably the best way. Yeah. Try to keep your ego out of it is the best way.
Well, one of the things I think a lot of us are very concerned about, I counsel a lot of the different students at the school because of my son's previous music career, and also because of my lawyer background and various other things. I say, don't go into something that you don't know who you are before you go into it, and that you're settled in who you are because of all the factors that you said. But we see a lot of tragic cases for particularly young people who have gotten a lot of fame in sports and music, film, even politics. How hard is it for people who get a lot of fame to not fall into those terrible things?
Well, like I said, it kind of depends on, I think, on your basic, value system. But even so, I've known a lot of people, even in country music, that were preachers' kids just like me, that got way out in left field, Fame is a weird thing, and when you start making money and you start believing your own press, and when you're having success, you start thinking you're really hot stuff, and you start feeling entitled. I think that's the worst thing that happens. You start feeling entitled and like you're doing all this yourself,
Yeah, it's all me.
I remember one time I had bought a fairly large house, and the biggest house I'd ever owned, and before or since, and I had all this lake frontage, out here on Old Hickory Lake and in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and I had Lori Morgan lived around the corner, and Johnny Cash and June were around the bend, and all this stuff, pretty heady stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember standing out on my deck and looking out on my queendom, as I used to call it, from my many 1,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
And this was back before I was as centered, let's just say, on who really is in charge of all these things in our life. And I remember thinking, wow, I think I was like 32 years old or something. I was sitting there thinking, literally to myself, look what I have done, Look what I'm a girl, and I'm only 32, and I own all that. I have done all this, And I sort of cringe now because I think, Holly, you didn't do that. You were very blessed, and from the get-go, and you, boy howdy, I wish I could have been me now, whispering in that girl's ear, saying, you need to rein yourself in, little missy, But I was gone. I totaled up the 3.5 years that I actually owned that place. I think I physically was in it maybe a little over a year, because I was out on the road in the back of a tour bus trying to pay for it, but you get to thinking, well, I'm a big star now. People expect me to live like this. They expect me to live in a massive house, with all this hooty-tooty stuff, and with my little BMW in the driveway and my boat bobbing at the dock, and you kind of get into that's that whole seductive thing where you start thinking like, well, people expect me to do all this stuff.
Right.
They wouldn't understand if I lived in some little modest little house like I grew up in, a little 3-bedroom, house somewhere in some little middle class neighborhood. How would that look?
Right.
You get all caught up in that stuff, And what's funny is I went to Detroit in 1997, and I had my own radio show up there.
Right.
And I quit touring for a year, and I sat on the radio up there at W4, big country station, and I did a radio show for a year. And they put me up in a little, it was a very nice, but it was about 800 or 900 square foot apartment. in a town called Novi, Michigan, about 40 miles from downtown Detroit where the radio station was. And I realized sitting there in that 900 square feet that it was all I needed.
Yes.
And that was a real epiphany, and I kept flying back and forth, flew back and forth to Nashville from my big house to this little apartment, in Detroit about 30 times that year, and because I'd go home on the weekends some. And the difference began to really weigh on me, and I thought, I don't need all this stuff. I don't need all these bedrooms, all these bathrooms, and all this stuff that I've just got to clean, and all this yard I got to, got people to take care of, and the bills and all this stuff. I don't need all this stuff. So when I got back from Detroit, after that year up there, I sold that house. I sold it, and I bought one about half the size, and I've been kind of scaling down ever since because I don't need all this stuff.
Well, I know we're short of time here, but Holly, I just wanted to thank you for being willing to be on our show, and I know our listeners are going to appreciate all that you've said. As you mean a lot to our family because of Daddy's Hands, and that will never be taken away from us. And that's a song that's going to live on for a very, very long time, probably longer than you and I. And I think it will remain one of those great songs. And even though you've had a whole bunch of other number ones and top 40s and had a fantastic career, I truly, and this is just my personal opinion, think that that's a song that the Lord gave you as your one of your legacies. And seeing your art, and you are very talented, by the way. I should have brought that up earlier.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And we just thank you for who and what you are, and for your witness. Thank you for being on our show.
I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate you letting me. I could be very verbose, so thank you for listening to listening to me ramble all this time.
That's part of our show, is to give some time to these things, and that's very helpful. Thank you for being on.
I appreciate it.
On behalf of our host, Dave Garrison, I'd like to thank you for listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show today. For additional information about the show, please go to faithandliberty.org, where you can access previous shows, like us on our Faith and Liberty Facebook page, and access other resources. Please keep in mind that the Faith and Liberty Talk Show exists only with the generosity and support of our listeners. If the show is of value to you, we would appreciate you visiting our website, faithandliberty.org, and donating to the show. The opinions and comments represent the views of our speakers and may or may not represent the views of Ohio Christian University. May God bless you, and thank you for listening to our show.